Hello there, fellow cultists. This is DM Nell, and I am back with another episode of Shadow Talk. And this is episode 102. And today I'm going to continue my overview of Chapter 1 of the Shadow of the Demon Lord Core Rulebook. Last time I went over ancestries, and today I'm going to be going over hopefully the rest of the chapter, starting with professions. So let's just jump right into it, shall we? All right, so the professions are the next stage of your character creation. After you've selected your ancestry and fleshed it out, you need to figure out what your character has done in their life up to this point. So professions are occupations, pursuits, and areas of knowledge broadly conceived to give you all the room you need to define your character in concert with the other descriptive elements gained during your character creation. So that's just a fancy schmancy way of saying, your profession basically defines all the things that your character knows from their life experience. So there are 6 categories in the different types of professions, and you, as with anything else, you can randomly roll them, or you can pick them, just depending on how you and your DM works it out. So the profession types are as follows. You have the academic, which is a scholar. You can read and write one language you know how to speak. You can roll a d20 and consult the academic professions table to determine your area of scholarship. You can recall information related to your area of scholarship. So that's what you get with an academic profession. With a common profession, you work in a trade. Roll a d20 and consult the common professions table to determine your trade. You can recall information related to your trade, and if your trade involves manufacturing, you know how to produce goods related to your trade from raw materials. Then you have a criminal background. So the criminal profession, you engage in illegal or illicit activities. Roll a d20, consult the criminal professions table to determine your profession. And then the martial profession, you join the army, law enforcement, or the local militia. Roll a d20, consult the martial professions table to determine your profession. Then the religious profession, you belong to a religious institution. Roll and consult the religious professions table. And then wilderness. You live beyond the civilization's bounds, and you can roll a d20 and consult the wilderness professions table. All right, so what do professions provide you? Well, actually, we'll get to that in a second. So the next section here is starting professions. So you begin with 2 professions. So you, as I already stated, you can choose to, or you can roll for it. So, if you know that you're going to be a faith-based character, then you'll probably just want to pick religious as your background. That would only make sense, right? Or, if you want to be just totally random because you have no idea what your future lies, what character you're going to build, just roll for it. It's an easy way to go. But you get 2 of them. And you can choose to forego one of those 2 for an additional language. Now, you'll recall when we were doing our ancestries, some of those ancestries also allowed you to select a profession. So these 2 would be in addition to whatever your ancestry provides you and whatever your path provides you. So if you choose a novice path that gives you a profession, then you can choose another one, and that's in addition to the professions that you get just for starting off. So you start off with 2 professions plus whatever your ancestry provides you, and you can swap one of those out for another language, which would be in addition to whatever languages your ancestry provided you. All right, so using professions. Professions describe what your character knows how to do and how your character fits into the setting. They act as cues to help you decide on how your character acts, what your character can do, and what things your character knows. The Game Master will sometimes look to your profession to judge whether an activity describes you describe results in a success or failure. A profession could grant a success, or it might grant one or more boons to your role if the outcome is not clear. All right, so this is pretty important couple of sentences, and I'm just going to highlight them. If I had a physical book, I'd get my highlighter out. Well, I actually have two physical books, but if I had my physical book out, I would take a highlighter and highlight those two paragraph or sentences if I were new to this game. I'm not. So what do these two sentences mean? Well, basically, these two sentences take the place of the various skills that are in other role-playing games. Now, using professions in the place of skills is not necessarily a new concept. I mean, this has existed in other games such as Warhammer Fantasy and I think Dungeon Crawl Classics as well. But it is a nice departure from a set of skills that everybody has, and it leaves it more to the player and the DM's discretion to determine whether or not a given course of action that a player wants to take, they might get a bonus based on the knowledge or experience that they've had in one of their professions. So let's just say, for example, let's just say that a character has a butcher as one of their professions, right? So they were a butcher at some point in their life leading up to their adventuring. So, you're getting into an adventure, and the characters, accidentally kill a town guard because the guard was being a dick and wouldn't let them in. But they have to get rid of the body, or else the rest of the town law enforcement's going to come down on them pretty heavy. So, the character with the butcher background would be able to essentially take that and neatly dispose of the body using his butcher background. And, the DM could give him a boon if they were bound by time and needed to get done quickly. The DM might say, hey, you can drag him in a back alley and get your butcher knife out and take care of business, but give me an agility challenge roll to see if you can do it with minimal mess and in a fairly quick manner, and you can have a boon to that roll because of your butcher background. So that's a pretty gory and horrible example, but it's best I got off the top of my head. So there you go. Another example might be a sailor example. So say your characters are running from a bunch of a wraith that is chasing them, and they come to a wide river, and they have to go across the river pretty quickly to escape the horseback wraith. And so they hop into the boat, and the DM says, "Okay, give me a strength challenge roll to see if you can pull away from shore fast enough before the wraith gets to it and is able to attack you all. I can't talk this morning." So the player character that has a sailor background might get a boon to that strength challenge roll because of his sailor background. He knows how to cast off quickly from shore, thus avoiding the team getting attacked by the wraith. So that's a less gory example, but all the professions here give you lots of interesting ideas on how to incorporate your profession into your activities during gameplay, and that's what the intent is here. So your academic professions start off with architecture and include things such as astrology, engineering, heraldry, literature, magic, medicine, the occult, politics, science, and war. And then you have your common professions such as animal trainer, artist, drover or herder, laborer, miner, shopkeeper, teamster. Then you have your criminal professions as agitator, beggar, burglar, cultist, gambler, pickpocket, pirate, prostitute, spy, urchin. And then you've got your martial professions: constable, detective, marine, patroller, slave, squire, and torturer. Then you have your wilderness professions, starting at bandit, brigand, or highway robber, barbarian, hunter, pioneer, outlaw, tracker, woodcutter. And then religious professions. Now, these are a little bit more detailed to help flesh out your religious character. Starting off with a devotee, you're a strong believer and follower of your faith's tenets. You can read and write one language you know. So that helps you right there. And as I mentioned in my last video, you cannot assume that your character can read and write a language that they know. The rules have to specifically state that you can read and write any languages. So this is important. Evangelist, you travel from place to place preaching your faith to any who will listen and rely on the charity of believers. You can read and write one language you know. Fanatic, you cloak yourself in deprivation to bring you closer to your gods. You might scourge yourself, deprive yourself of food and drink, or find other creative ways to make yourself suffer. Heretic, you hold religious beliefs deemed dangerous and heretical by the leaders of your faith. Initiate of the old faith, you have been initiated to the old faith. Minister, you are a religious leader in your community. You know how to read and write one language you know. Acolyte of the new god, you study to become a priest in the cult of the new god. You know how to read and write one language you know. Inquisitor's henchman, you serve an inquisitor or witch hunter. Pilgrim, you travel to sites you deem holy, or sites deemed holy to members of your religion. Street preacher, you preach on street corners, beseeching people to seek redemption as the end is near. And then temple ward, you were raised in a temple, you were likely an orphan and brought up by the clergy. So some of these allow you to read and write a language and others don't. So, again, these professions help flesh out your character and help to make that character a little bit more well-rounded. So once you have your ancestries and your profession, then you have to equip your character. So the starting equipment is based off of the type of lifestyle that you led leading up to your first adventure. And again, you can determine this by picking, or you can do it randomly. I always do it randomly because, who wouldn't choose rich, right? I mean, you get more stuff. But it's between you and your DM. So if your DM allows you to choose, your DM may say, okay, well, I'll allow one person to be rich, one person to be wealthy, 2 people to be comfortable, 3 people to be, getting by, poor, or destitute. Or the rest of the people have to be getting by, poor, or destitute, or whatever. That's one way to do it. But I keep it simple. I would just roll on the table, make it random. That way, everybody gets what they get. So you could have half your party rich and the other half destitute, or everybody could be comfortable. You just never know. That's the beauty of randomness. So what do these all mean? So starting with destitute, destitute means you're penniless and you live on the street. So what you get with the destitute lifestyle is that you have a club or sling with 20 stones, you have rags for clothes, and a pouch containing 1d6 bits. So that's pretty, that's pretty low on the social scale. Now, what are bits? We'll talk about that when we get into the equipment section of the rules. All right, the next is poor. So poor means that you're living in squalid conditions and you're never sure where you're going to get your next meal. So as a poor person, you have a staff or club or sling with 20 stones, patched basic clothing, a sack, bread, a water skin, a tinderbox, a candle, and a pouch containing 2d6 bits. Getting by. Getting by means that you earn enough to meet all your expenses. So you have a dagger, a staff or club or sling with 20 stones, basic clothing, a backpack, a week of rations, a water skin, a tinderbox, 2 torches, and a pouch containing 1d6 copper pieces. Then there's the comfortable lifestyle, you live well and can make enough that you can save a little. If you are comfortable, then you have a dagger, a staff, or a club, or sling with 20 stones, fine clothing, a backpack, a cloak, a week of rations, a water skin, a coil of rope, a tinderbox, 2 torches, a healing potion, a pouch containing 2d6 copper pieces. You also have a small shield, an incantation of a rank 0 spell, the GM's choice, written on a scroll, or a healer's kit, toolkit, or writing kit. Then you have the wealthy lifestyle. You live very well. You have nice clothes and fine accommodations, and you have probably not gone without for a long time. If you are wealthy, you have a dagger, courtier's clothing, a cloak, a backpack, a week of rations, a water skin, a coil of rope, a tinderbox, a lantern, 2 flasks of oil, a healing potion, and a pouch containing 1d6 silver shillings. You also have a shield, an incantation of a rank 0 spell, the GM's choice, written on a scroll, or a healer's kit or toolkit, or a healer's kit, toolkit, or writing kit. And then finally, if you're rich, you want for nothing. You likely come from a noble family and you have servants and an estate, castle, or house in the best part of town. Your fortunes earn you many friends and many enemies. As a rich person, you have a dagger, noble's clothing, a cloak, a week of rations, a water skin, a healing potion, and a pouch containing 2d6 silver shillings. You also have a personal servant, a guard, and 3 horses with saddles. All right, so that is how you equip your 0 level character. Fairly quick and easy. As long as you roll on the table, you get what you get, and you write down in your character sheet all the stuff that you get with the lifestyle that you randomly selected. The next thing that you get is an interesting thing. So this is kind of something that role-playing games have started doing lately, I guess. I don't really recall this in the old days as something that was done, but D&D had a I forget what they call it, baubles or trinkets. I think it's trinkets. Table that you can start with. This is an interesting thing, which is actually more interesting than trinkets. So let's just see what you get. So basically what you have to do is you have to roll a d6 to determine which table of interesting things that you roll on. And then you roll a d20 and consult the appropriate table. So if I were to randomly take a d6 and roll, get a 5, and I would go to table 5 to see what interesting things are there. And then I would take a d20 and I would randomly roll and get a 2. And so on table 5 with a 2, I would get a glass globe filled with swirling mist. So that's all you get. You don't get any explanation. You don't get any, you don't get your DM or GM telling you what that means. That's what you start with. You say you have a glass globe filled with swirling mist. It's up to you and your DM to decide if that is more than what it seems, or if that's just what it is, or if there's some sort of mystery around it. Maybe that comes into play later in your game. Maybe that's just something that you use to barter with to get something else that you want. Maybe you want a nice shield, and the guy's being hardballing you for a pretty hefty price. Maybe you pull out this nice glass globe with a swirling mist in it, and talk him into giving you that shield for the interesting thing. Basically, you can use your interesting thing any way that you want, but there's some pretty cool, interesting things in here and some pretty bizarre ones. So, just randomly taking a look here, you can have some things such as a tiny, inert, magical or mechanical spider, or a personal servant, or a 10-pound bag of flour, or a bottle labeled Eye of Newt, or a set of clothing that can change appearance once each day at dusk. You can have something as abstract as fear and loathing. That's your interesting thing. You have fear and loathing. What does that mean? I don't know. It's something for you and your DM to figure out. You could have a bizarre fetish. You could have a demanding spouse. You can have an animated mouse skeleton, a brain in a jar, a lifetime of regrets, a piece of amber containing a human-faced fly. So, lots of weird and, just bizarre things, along with a lot of normal and seemingly mundane things in these tables. But it, gives you just kind of just a weird little thing to start your character with. So once you have your interesting thing, then the remainder of the chapter basically tells you how to role play. So for those of you that are familiar with role playing, then the rest of this chapter just kind of is useful. I mean, I would read it just to get some ideas, but it's really not mandatory, I guess, to finish your character. After you have your interesting thing, you're pretty much ready to do your first adventure. However, let's just go over the rest of this chapter and see what else we have in here. So you got role playing. It starts with just talking through some role playing questions to help you understand your character. Starting with personality traits, you can randomly roll on this table and get a positive or negative personality trait, or you can just figure out how your character is going to be on your own. It's this part of the chapter is basically here for people who just want their hand held a little bit more on creating an interesting character rather than coming up with one on their own. What are your character's values? What are their fear and loathing? What do they love and desire? What secrets maybe do they have or do they know? What achievements have they had? What are their thoughts on authority? Do they prefer to be in charge? Do you like making decisions, or are you content letting others decide? Obligations or responsibilities. Do you follow through on your promises? Do you complete tasks? Good and evil. Are you good? Are you evil? Where do you fall in that scale? Are you somewhere in between? Then it talks about your first adventure. And this is kind of interesting, probably more so for the game master. So basically it talks about how you should let the first adventure serve as a means to learn the rules and make your decisions and outcome meaningful in how you go from your zero level adventure into choosing a path, a novice path. It also talks about building a group. So, this is a team-based game. It's not an individual-based game. You don't get individual rewards. You don't get individual experience. Everybody levels up at the same time. So the strength of this game is the strength of the party that you are building. So it gives you some guidelines on how to build an effective group, how to cooperate, how to avoid conflict, finding gear and being able to, ensure the right people have the right gear, achieving your objective, and so forth. It talks about level advancement, how you gain a level as a team, what you do after you gain a level. You gain your novice path, and then when it's time at third level, you gain an expert path, and when it's time at seventh level, you gain a master path. The level advancement summary is on this table here. So at first level, you choose a novice path from the ones presented in Chapter 3 and gain the benefits from that path for this level. Level 2, you gain the benefits from your novice path for this level. At level 3, you gain the expert path from the ones presented in Chapter 4 and gain the benefits from that path for this level. So this basically walks you through where in the book you go to next when you gain a level. It's pretty helpful when you're first starting, but once you are familiar with how to navigate the book, you can kind of this is kind of just excess information. You can start at higher levels. So if you don't want to start at 0 level, you can start at first level, or you can start at third level. It's up to you and your DM to decide how you want to do that. And this gives you some guidelines on how to do that. So you can start the game at high level if you join an existing group. That's another example. Or if your game master decides to set the group level higher than 0, you can create a starting character as normal, but when you finish, go to the advancement table up here and follow the instructions for each level until you reach the group's level. Then equipment at higher level. Characters at higher level have more resources than do those at lower levels. For each level, you add 2d6 silver shillings to your purse. You can spend these coins to purchase better weapons, armor, and additional equipment from the items described in Chapter 6. In addition, each time you choose a path at levels 1, 3, and 7, you gain another random interesting thing from the interesting things tables presented under starting equipment. Now this last paragraph here, I read it not too long ago, actually. I may have read it when I first got the book, but it didn't really hit me until I reread it recently. And it got me thinking, okay, so this is in the starting at higher levels section, or assuming that you're building your character at a higher level. But it tells you to gain an interesting thing at levels 1, 3, and 7. Nowhere else in the book does it say you get another interesting thing other than when you start the character. So, I'm curious now as to whether the intent was that whenever you gain a new path, so at levels 1, 3, and 7, you should also gain a new interesting thing. I don't know. Or maybe he's assuming that you will acquire interesting things as you are adventuring. So this just helps a person that's starting a character at a higher level to have an interesting thing. I don't know how to interpret that. When you get your expert path, that you would get a new interesting thing, and when you get your master path, that you would get a new interesting thing. So I might start doing that going forward. Haven't done it up till now, though. So, or you can just, get one at 0 level and then not get another interesting thing for the rest of the game, unless you find it during the course of your adventuring. It's totally up to your game master at that point. Okay, so what else do we have here? Oh, look at that. We are at the end of the chapter. So that finishes out your character creation. So at this point, you are ready to rock and roll. Your character should be filled out. So you have your professions, you have your starting, you have your ancestry. You have 0 as your level, so you would put a 0 up here. You don't have a novice, expert, or master path yet because you're 0 level. You should have your strength filled out with your strength modifier in this bubble here. You should have your intellect score added here with your intellect modifier in this bubble, and your perception score in here with your perception modifier in this bubble. Now, I may not have been clear on that in the previous video, but when you get your perception score, and your ancestry tells you how to determine your perception score, that's just like your other attributes here, in that you get a modifier with that. So your perception score, in most cases, is equal to your intellect score. So if your intellect is 11, then you would have an 11 perception. And then you get a +1 for your intellect being 11, because your modifier is your score minus 10. So 11 minus 10 is 1. And then the same thing goes with your perception. Now, some of those ancestries allowed you to take your intellect +1 to be your perception. So if you were in one of those ancestries, you would have an 11 intellect, but your perception would be 12. So that means your perception modifier would be +2. Then you would have your agility score, which you would add here, and your agility modifier in that bubble. You would have your will score here. I don't recall any ancestry starting with insanity, so that should be a 0. Power should be a 0. Corruption should be a 0 unless you're an orc. Then your health score is equal to your strength score. Unless you're a dwarf, then it'd be equal to your strength score +4, I think. And then your healing rate is 1/4 of your health. Then your defense score is equal to your agility score, unless you're a clockwork, in which case it's 13. Then you have your speed over here and your size over here. And then for all of the equipment that you got for selecting your profession and your lifestyle, you would include your weapons here, and then your random equipment over here in this area. Then any talents. So if your ancestry gave you some talents, you would put them over here, and then magic goes over here, but nobody starts with magic, so this would probably be blank starting out. And what's missing here basically is languages. So basically, I would put them under the profession section up here. So you would just indicate your professions, and then underneath that you would indicate the languages, and you would want to detail whether you know how to read and write your languages, or whether you just know how to speak your languages, because that's important. During the course of roleplay, it's we tend to assume that our characters are at least as intelligent as we are, and are able to read and write the language that they speak. But this game does not assume that, so you have to specify in your character sheet whether you can read and write the language that you speak. All right, so that is pretty much it, boys and girls. I have finished chapter 1. So the next chapter we will tackle will be the playing the game chapter. Now that's a pretty hefty chapter. So it's going to take me I think at least 2 or 3 videos to get through this, if not more, simply because there's a lot to unpack here. So we will be going through that in a future video. Not sure if it'll be the next one, but it will be a future video. So with that, let me go ahead and wrap things up here. Thanks for again. Need to kickstart my brain. Thanks for watching. Appreciate your views, and I am out of here. Hail to the Demon Lord. How do I stop this damn thing?